This is bi-weekly English program. I'm your host, Zach, with technician Amrullah Tahiro. I have a special guest today. I'm joined by Dr. Trevor Truman or Dr. Galato. We're going to discuss about human rights abuses throughout Oromia. As you all remember, the month of April, we discussed about the report Oromia Support Group come up with in the months of June and the months of April on OMN. So Dr. Trevor was our guest that time, and today we're going to discuss about the recent 57th report on human rights abuses, on forced disappearance, on killings and extrajudicial killings throughout Oromia. Dr. Trevor, welcome back to OMN.
Welcome to Zach, and thank you very much for having me back again.
Galatoma.
Galatoma.
All right. Last time we discussed about the 56th edition, the 56th report by Oromia Support Group. Well, before we proceed to the details of the current report, human rights abuses throughout Oromia, let me start by asking you to introduce yourself and your organization to our viewers, Dr. Trevor.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Zach. For those of you who've never heard of me, my name is Dr. Trevor Truman. I'm a retired general medical practitioner. In 1994, I helped to establish the Oromia Support Group, and we've been reporting on human rights abuses since before then, from about 1992. And up till 2012, we had published 49 reports on human rights abuses in Ethiopia. Our information tended to dry up then, and our work was done, we felt, because Kero was on the march then, and they really changed the political scene in Ethiopia. But then when the abuses started again with Abiy Ahmed's regime, we felt that we had to begin reporting again on the abuses going on. And the shocking thing is the comparison between the abuses now compared to the first 20 years of our work.
Well, in our previous discussion, Dr. Trevor, as you remember, we talked about your 56th report was sent to different international human rights organizations like Amnesty International and different human rights organizations throughout the world. Is there any feedback, or did they include anything in their bi-yearly or biannual report? Did they extract anything from the report you guys made previously? If there is any follow-up from Amnesty International or Human Rights Watch or different human rights organizations throughout the world?
I think certainly we have an influence. I've heard from journalists that they read our publications. We cannot expect Amnesty International or Human Rights Watch to quote directly from our research, because they're contractually obliged to only publish their own research, and we fully respect that. Having said that, I'm not entirely satisfied with the coverage that we've had from either organization in the abuses of the last regime. I'm afraid they have been perhaps unduly influenced by the general bias in the overall media, which is against the Oromo and the oppressed peoples of Ethiopia.
Great. When we discuss the details of the current report, we'll talk about the bias, media reporting, and ignoring Oromo issues. We will talk about how Western medias are framing the political situation in the country and what point they are missing, and what will be the consequence of those biased report? We'll talk about it in detail. So let's get back to the current report, the 57th report. I remember that in 56 reports, mainly focused on the Western Walaga 5 districts, the one that previously reported, the one that we discussed previously on the month of April. It was only focused on the 5 districts of the Western Walaga. What is the main focus of the 57th report, and what are the main issues in the current report by Oromia Support Group, Dr. Trevor?
Thank you. In fact, Report 56 did include the information from the West Wallaga report, but there were also abuses reported in number 56 from the other regions of Oromia, from the central Oromia, from Amhara region also, from Benishangul Gumuz region, and from southern part of Oromia too, as well as SNNPR. So, and although the West Wallaga report featured very heavily in Report 56 wasn't exclusively about that. Report 57 um, really is a continuation of the same, but worse. We have now recorded the main features of the report are the killing of innocent civilians suspected of political opposition to the government, often largely Kero members who have been systematically targeted for elimination, and their followers and their families, and the burning of properties, not only of people believed to be in support of Kero or the Oromo Liberation Army, but the properties of farmers who've been subject to ethnic cleansing.
Well, Dr. Truman, Dr. Trevor, most of the time, um, people ask, when I just want to get a little bit insight about the report before we kind of like go into details of the report. What are methods of like collecting data and how accurate it is, and what are sources of information for you guys? Do you guys have people on the ground that work on these reports with you guys? And like, if somebody asks the accuracy, how accurate this report is, what will be the answer from your organization, Dr. Trevor?
Yes, I can fully understand that. And people should always question information that is published about human rights abuses, especially in Ethiopia, where there is so much misreporting. Um, Over the last 30 years, I've developed a network of informants who send information via a person who collates that information in Norway. This person has been integral to OSG reports over the last 30 years, and indeed was responsible for a lot of the reports that we received from inside Oromia during the 1990s. And he's maintained a lot of his connections within the country, although he now lives in Norway, and we get a lot of our information from there. Also, we get information from Human Rights League for the Horn of Africa, the Oromo Menschenrechts Health Organization in Hanover in Germany, from OLA, the Oromo Legal and Legacy and Advocacy Organization in the States, publishes information which we share. And also, we've developed contacts from London that we have via individuals that I know personally and who are involved in OSG in London. I better not reveal their names, but and we have extensive network of contacts, and often we get reports that are mutually confirmatory. and we get the report on of the same instance from two directions, if you see what I mean.
Great.
Also, we check for internal consistency as well as external consistency between sources. But we do rely on people that we trust. I have to say this. And quite often, there is no way of verifying what we are told, except we've been told truthful things by that very same reporter over the last 20 years or so.
Great. Actually, I was looking into the report and I recognized some of the pictures, some of the atrocities as a media. We were reporting in some of the human rights abuses throughout Oromia, and most of the photos in the report are very familiar because we were reporting on these issues back in the days, and some of the people in the report are still in some detention facilities throughout the country, and I can see that it's a very accurate, and anybody who have updates on Oromo politics and what is going on in Ethiopia can easily recognize some of the faces in the report. Good. So let's get back to the detail of the report. There are killings, there are forced disappearances, there are kidnaps, there are tortures, there are human and democratic right abuses throughout Oromia, especially after the so-called reform government that just term of office expired in the last year came to power. So can you tell us a little bit details about those things, about the torture, about the killing, about the forced disappearance included in report? Just let's get back to let's kind of like get detail into the report, Dr. Trevor. What are the main things, the main
Yeah.
abuses included in the report?
The main features of this report are similar to those of the previous few reports in terms of the extrajudicial killings, the extent of that, and the destruction of property, either as a political persecution event or as an example of ethnic cleansing. The There are other abuses which have come to light, which we must mention before the end of the program, because these are very serious indeed and involve illegal detention of political prisoners in and around the capital, and whose lives are in danger currently. But to return to the report, the Oromia Support Group has now reported 2,393 extrajudicial killings in Ethiopia over the last, well, less than 3 years, since October 2018. During our reporting of the TPLF years, when we were most active, between reporting abuses between 1992 and 2012, over that 12-year period, we reported 4,498 extrajudicial killings. That's nearly 4,500, just too short of 4,500 in 20 years. And yet, under Abiy's regime, we've got nearly 2,400, 2,393 within 3 years. That's over half as many people killed in 15% of the time of the TPLF regime, which was murderous enough in itself. As well as this number of killings, we see that the persecution is measured in killings more than detention. The ratio of killings to detention is 10 times that what it was under the TPLF. We see the systematic, targeted killing of Kero and Kero supporters and their families, killing of mature politicians, and we see the destruction of their properties, and also the destruction by burning of properties of ordinary farmers whose only crime is to live adjacent to Amhara region or within Amhara region. And we see this ethnic cleansing by Amhara militia active in the Oromia Special Zone in Oromia in Amhara region. We see this against Benishangul and Oromo in Benishangul Gumuz region. We see it in Oromia region in East Walaga, in Kiramu against Oromo farmers there by, again, Amhara militia. And we see it again in Fantale against farmers in East Shoa. Each of these cases are ethnic cleansing. And there's a nasty racist tendency emerging with the policies of the government against Tigrayans. We see that Tigrayans have been withdrawn from the armed forces in UN deployment. Embassy staff, the embassies are being asked if any of their employees are Tigrayan. And returnees from Saudi Arabia migrant detention are being detained on arrival if they are Tigrayan. The others are being conscripted into the army. So we see a very disturbing combination of a viciously cruel regime which has a single-minded ideology to return us to the 19th century, to the old days of controlling the whole empire through force.
Great. So I was looking into report, and recently you told me at the beginning of the program, you told me that there is a sort of development is even after the report made, especially after war broke out, after civil war broke out in different parts of the country. There is a forced military service like Derg regime that is going on throughout the country. So the users are forced to serve in the military without their consent, and there is a big economic crash in the country. The users in the country that graduate from higher educations are not getting any job opportunity except serving in the military. There is also one of the thing we said earlier. There is a biased reporting from the Western medias about all these human rights abuses. Of course, it's known there is a big war between Ethiopian government and Tigray forces in the northern part of the country. But not only in Tigray, throughout Oromia, there is a forced killing, there is a kidnap, there is extrajudicial killing in different parts of Oromia. There is ongoing war between the government forces and Oromo Liberation Front. There, everything that's happening in the north is just replicating throughout Oromia. What do you think the Western medias are biased when they report on Ethiopian issues? When they kill people, what is government mentioning? When they kill Keros and Kares, what are the reasons?
There is no doubt that the government is intent on taking the cream of Oromo youth, taking the cream of Oromo society and wiping it down to prevent any resurgence of Oromuma, Oromo nationalism. This is what they're trying to do, and this is why we put that quote at the beginning of the report. To completely get rid of the fish, you've got to dry out the ocean. And this is what they're doing. They're trying to, they got a scorched earth campaign against Kero and Kero families. It's, as I say, it's the cruelest regime that I've been exposed to in Ethiopia. You say the Western media are tending to ignore it, yes, because they are concentrating on northern Ethiopia. Even the sanctions recently issued by President Biden specifically mention only the conflict in northern Ethiopia over the last 11 months. He doesn't mention the 3-year-old conflict that's been going on in Oromia and elsewhere in Ethiopia. Yes, they are ignoring the Oromo because the Tigrayans and the Amharas basically have got the connections with Western media. They are the people that have been over in Europe and the States for the last 50, 60 years, whereas the Oromo have yet to really find their feet and influence within Western media, Western organizations, international media, and international organizations. And it's not surprising that the majority of Westerners see Ethiopia through the eyes of Amhara, see the Ethiopia through the eyes of people who feel automatically um, paternalistic about the Ethiopian state, just like English people felt about the colonies when I was a boy in the 1950s. Um, and yes, they are biased uh, because the media are the Amhara media, or basically it's unfair to refer to these as Amhara media, but they're media which reflect right-wing Amhara ideology. People like the American Amhara Association or the National Movement of Amhara. And it's these organizations that are spreading misinformation about the Oromo because it suits them to label Ola and the OLF as terrorists. These are the originators of the Shane derogatory term. Um, and these people do have undue influence, yes. And in part, they are part of the strategy of the Prosperity Party. You'll notice that two of the biggest atrocities that occurred, uh, the killings of large numbers of people in the immediate aftermath of Hachalu Hundesa's assassination on the 29th of June last year, when demonstrators were killed and there was rioting in Shashamane and Dira. It was the media immediately said this was Kero who were responsible, and that was a very quick response. And there was some flimsy evidence and false papers spread around saying this is Kero's work, and it wasn't. It was people who burst in by the Prosperity Party supporters to make mayhem in Shashamane and Dera and cause all this killing. And this was blamed squarely on Kero by media which were prepared, ready for just that eventuality. It was a strategic move. Kill Hachalu and then instigate violence and then blame Kero. That was deliberate policy of Abiy Ahmed. And we saw the same again in November of last year when Amhara settlers were killed in Guliso. And this was a bunch of thugs hired by presumably Oromo special forces, I don't know which, but they were certainly not Ola forces that attacked Amhara settlers with whom Oromo had been living peaceably for decades. And this was blamed within 24 hours on Ola, including by organizations like Amnesty International. Now, this shows a really well-oiled machinery for instigating an attack, knowing that it was going to happen, and then informing organizations and blaming the Oromo Liberation Army, which was the whole purpose of the report. And since then, we've seen other instances where Oromo farmers are attacked in Wollo, in the Oromo Special Zone, and they blame the hostilities on an invading force of the Oromo Liberation Army, which then was nowhere near, wasn't within hundreds of miles of the area. We hear attacks on Amhara militia in East Wallaga being said to be attacks on Amhara civilians, whereas not. that they'd been a repulsion of attacks by Ola, a repulsion by Ola against Amhara militia that have been attacking farmers in East Wolga. So it's unfortunate, and we have to call out this media bias, but eventually the truth will out, and we will manage to overcome this.
Okay, so Dr. Trevor, as we can see, the Western media, that's known, we don't expect any fair, balanced reporting or media coverage about Oromo issue from back home, because as we all know, they all are government paid medias, and they do whatever they're doing on purpose, blaming everything on OLF, blaming anything on Oromo nationalists. This has been the narration they has been pushing for a long period of time, and there is nothing new about that. But the Western medias, is there any attempt from you and your organization or organization that that works in collaboration with you guys, try to reach out to the Western medias to rectify or to stop their bias and report everything that is happening in the country equally, to force them to get a kind of coverage about all these atrocities in the country? Is there any attempts to reach out to the Western medias? And additionally, is there any attempt to reach out to different human rights organizations this time around? Like in the previous one, I remembered that you guys reach out to different human rights organizations, and you guys send the report to Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch and other human rights organizations. What about this time?
Yeah, we always send their information, and in fact, I had an email this morning from a colleague in Amnesty International saying that video footage that we were sent, taken from inside a Saudi Arabian migrant detention center, was actually in the hands of the Saudi Arabia researchers for Amnesty International. So that, yes, that's sharing hard information with organisations like that. But I'm afraid we don't get the attention that we need. We don't get the attention that we deserve from international media, and that is because of a pro Abyssinian bias, if you like, and even this sanctions from Biden. Um, Concentrated on the north. As I say, it mentioned only the conflict in the north. It didn't um, mention the word Oromo once, and this is not good enough. The main issue in Ethiopia is the trampling of ordinary people, and the biggest number of ordinary people who are trampled on are Oromo. It's got to stop. And unless it does, then there'll be no stability in the region at all. This is the message we've got to get over.
I'm glad you raised about the recent Biden administration sanction on Ethiopia. In addition to the sanction, they are calling for the ceasefire between Ethiopian government and Tigray forces. They're not mentioning about what is going on in Oromia, as well as there is a big fight on the battle between Oromo Liberation Front and Ethiopian government. As we all know, there is no any way that you can call for peace. In their recent call for peace, they were telling Abiy Ahmed government to sit for negotiation with Tigray forces. What will be the implication of this on overall political situation of that country? Ignoring the Oromo side, do you think they can bring peace in Ethiopia with the way they are going right now, Dr. Truman, as somebody that really knows Ethiopian politics for a long period of time? Do you
No,
really think there
it
is a
doesn't have
possibility of
it
bringing peace?
doesn't have a snowball in hell's chance of succeeding unless the Oromo are involved, and the TPLF know this well. And that's one of the good consequences of this cooperation between the Oromo Liberation Army and the TPLF. When it comes to negotiation, the TPLF know full well that there will be no stability, and they will insist on Ola's participation in dialogue and the political parties which represent the Oromo people, the Oromo Liberation Front and the Oromo Federalist Congress. They know, and the next time there is a dialogue with the establishment of a transitional administration, the Oromo will be part of that dialogue.
Well, Abiy is talking about the national reconciliation process. As we all know, he's gonna sit with his friends in crime, like those people in the same political camp with him, like Branu Naga and others. So othering or pushing Oromo political organizations to the side has been taking place for a longer period of time. Let's talk about those people in the highest position in Oromo Liberation Front that are in a different military camp. They're included in the recent report. What is the update on them, Dr. Trevor?
It's been very worrying, very frustrating, the update on the OLF detainees. To remind everybody, these are people who've been unlawfully detained since at least a year ago, following the assassination of Harchalu. Um, and lots, at least 4 court orders have been made for their release from custody, but the police have continued to keep them in illegal detention. They've moved them frequently from place to place, so it's very difficult to find out where they are. And currently, 10, including Colonel Gamacho Ayana, have disappeared from Galan police station. Um, Before they were at Galan, some were in Barayu police custody, and it seems that Barayu, Galan are bad places, very bad places to be detained in terms of abuse and denial of food. But it seems that they're being taken to an even worse place, Awash military camp. Now, 2 days ago, they disappeared from Gilan, Colonel Gamachu and about 10 others, including Bate Urgesa, who's been badly beaten about the face and head, and Mikhail Mikhail Bekele, who is said to be very ill. Now, we know that these people have been suffering, that they're extremely emaciated when seen in prison a few weeks ago. Abdi Ragasa is said to be very ill, has been severely tortured. He's known to be in Awash military camp, to where we think the others have been transferred in the last 2 days. One person died there a month ago. In another detention facility at Tuludimtu, 19 died of some infectious disease recently. And this is a place where sex slaves and rape victims of military personnel have been kept. Many new prisoners are said to have been taken there in the last week. And because of all these abuses, the prisoners in Kaliti have refused to attend court. Now, the detainees, up till about 2 months ago, are meant to receive the equivalent of 20 birrs worth of food and clothing on a daily basis. This is obviously not enough, but this was stopped 2 months ago for the OLF detainees. And people who try and supply food to these detainees are themselves beaten or followed or harassed. So the OLF detainees really are in severe danger now of being neglected, um, to the extent that it will threaten their life. And this is something that has to be taken very seriously.
It's very horrific. So the forced disappearance, torture, killing, forced military service, rape, artificial famine that is taking place in the country because the government is not doing its job properly. All this is happening in the country. What do you think is the way forward? How? Uh, what are like possibilities of just getting things to normal? What is your call for anybody concerned about politics of that country, Dr. Trevor?
Well, there's nothing that's normal that would be um, something that you'd want in Ethiopia. Normality is horror. What we want is a complete change. We have to break the mold completely of Ethiopian politics, and the mold that says that the winner takes all, the zero sum belly politics, if you like, that has so bedeviled Africa over the last several decades. And what we're seeing now is a return to 2 centuries ago. What was going on with the competing for the resources of two feudal lords up in the north of Abyssinia, and they're fighting over the resources of the rest of the country. Um, and any fool can see that this will continue until the whole mold is broken, until we get proper representation for the Oromo people and therefore the rest of Ethiopia, and then there will be stability. So it all begins with a dialogue to which the Oromo and other oppressed peoples of Ethiopia have equal access and equal control. A dialogue that will help to set up a transitional administration that guarantees human rights on an equal basis to every single citizen of Ethiopia. Human rights which include the right to self-determination, as in the Ethiopian constitution now, which I believe currently applies in Ethiopia.
Let me make this my final question. So while all these atrocities happening in the country, Abiy is trying to form a new government, which the election was left. The election he made the last couple months was not really election. It was kind of joke. He was trying to form government in a weeks, and he's trying to form a cabinet for the new government. Do you think he will succeed this way, Dr. Trevor?
Of course he won't. He's a deluded, foolish man whose future is very uncertain. But it is very disappointing that some people still believe his rhetoric. There are people in the State Department who still believe that Abiy has the backing of the majority of the Oromo population. And it's up to the Oromo people to demonstrate that he simply does not have that backing. And how the State Department can be so deluded, I do not know. And it's apparently based on some statistical um, work that was done presumably in Addis Ababa, in Finfinne, but I don't know. But it's a work of fiction, obviously. But if there are people in the State Department who are willing to entertain that as a possible version of truth, then we have a lot of work to do to show people the way forward. But fortunately, the Oromo people on the ground in Oromia are doing just that.
Great. I have finished my questions. If you have any message to anybody concerned about that country politics, the floor is yours. In my side, I finished all the questions I prepared for this interview, Dr. Trevor.
Well, I'm not a politician, um, but I can see that although times are extremely hard for ordinary people in Ethiopia, Oromo and others in Ethiopia at the moment, things are extremely hard, and I really feel for people over there. But we have to know and realize that this is a moment of great change, and if we keep working hard at it, then we can achieve breaking the mold, making the difference, changing the system so that things will be better in the future for our children and our grandchildren. And it's just more blood, sweat, and tears, as Churchill said. But the end is near. We are getting to a real. I hate the word crossroads because people have used it so often, but there is a time of change, huge change happening in Ethiopia, and the Oromo are poised like never before to take advantage of this and to insist on equality and an equal voice in the future of their region and their country.
Well, Dr. Trevor, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining me all the way from London and explaining about this report. Galatuma.
Singalate Fadda, and you're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, our interview is done. We'll come up with another guest with another program next week. Until next time, I'm your host, Zach, with technician Amrulla Tahiro, for everyone tuning in and watching us in different OMN platforms on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, as well as on the satellite. Until next time, I wish you all the best. See you next time.